What is going on, beautiful people? Hope you guys are. I never used that line. How about that? Did y'all like that?
I don't know. I thought it was pretty good. Caught me off guard.
I knew they weren't going to be like, what in the world? Hope you guys are having an awesome Sunday, man. Welcome to Sunday Night Live. We're going to be hanging out tonight, answering your questions. So if you've got questions, home theater related, music related, movies related, drop those in the chat. We'll star them as we go. Try to get to as many as we can. We're probably going to hold this to about an hour, partly because I am sleep deprived. I was up to about 3 a.m. editing a video. We've got another one coming out tomorrow. And sadly, it's a 7-minute video.
Those are the worst.
How long does it take to edit a 7-minute video? Well, apparently a long stinking time. So, but we're going to, it'll be an introduction to the new Klipsch Reference Premiere Series version 2. So we'll be doing a series of videos on the channel. So definitely check that out. It'll go live tomorrow at noon. So let's say hi to some folks in the chat before we jump into it, man. K-Man, good to see you. You guys are like, I'm first. I never understood. I get comments like that on my channel. It's like, first. I'm like,
congratulations.
I don't know what to tell them, man. It's pretty funny though. Hey, Michael, thanks so much for the congratulations. Yeah, we hit 106,000. Oh, in celebratory, that's pretty cool. Jonathan hit 1,000 subscribers on his channel. Super rocking, man. You know, most people, most content creators never hit 1,000.
Really?
It's because they're losers. And Jonathan is a winner.
You might have helped me out just a tad.
No, man. You rocked it out, man. That winning smile, that winning personality. I mean, look at this, man. Who wouldn't subscribe to that face right there?
Get off here.
It's so the real winner is Velma in the background. That's why.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like she's sleeping.
Yeah.
She's where Michael wants to be.
The cool thing is Jonathan does just some really fun and very educational comparisons. These guys in Kansas City, they love doing objective kind of side-by-side blind kind of stuff. So he's got some really cool videos and he's going to have a lot more coming. Right, Jonathan?
That's right. I got a series right now between the LS12000 and the NZ7 that I'm putting together. So the first one's published, but I'm going to have about 10 of them. Just individual study on each aspect, like brightness, black floor, motion, HDR handling, with the tone mapping, sharpness, just kind of a subject video on each of those topics.
Man,
it should be pretty good.
All right. The hardest part, honestly, is spelling your name. So I'm going to pull it up right here. I'm going to share my screen. Actually, no, I'll just drop it in the chat. So if you guys are interested in checking out Jonathan's channel, I'm going to drop it right here. Boom. Jonathan, how do you pronounce it? Von England?
Yeah, Von England. You got it.
Man.
Yeah, that's not the German pronunciation, but it's the way we say it. I was told by a German-speaking native speaker that I was butchering my own last name.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I guess the V is a PH sound and the E's are A sound, and so it ends up very different.
How do they say it in German?
I'll butcher it even saying it, so I regret. It was like Von Engeln or something like that. And
Michael's like, humiliate yourself. Do it now.
But hey, if we try anything like that, everyone is like asking, how do you spell it again? So I say how it sounds or how it reads.
Nice. Super cool. Well, anyway, congratulations on hitting 1,000 subscribers. That's super cool, man. It's a hard grind, dude. I mean, I've been doing YouTube for 5 years now. And it took me 4 years to hit 1,000 subscribers. And I wasn't trying to grow a channel. I was just doing a video here on home theater. Then a month later, I'd do one on a vacation we went on. And then 2 months later, I'd do a GoPro video. So it was just really random. Mm-hmm. And so once I made a decision, hey, I'm going to put out one video a week in the niche of home theater, something I'm passionate about. And I just want to see, can I even grow a channel? And it began to grow. And so here we are doing live streams, and I'm flying out this Wednesday with Brad, Home Theater Gamer. We're going out to Louisiana to film a $500,000 Star Wars themed home theater. So I'm super pumped about that. I posted a YouTube short on YouTube, I guess a couple of days ago. So just kind of give you a little sneak peek. So if you haven't seen that, you can check that out. So tonight, like I said, we're just going to be answering your questions. So if you got questions, drop those in the chat, and we'll get right to it. Before we do that, guys, how was your week? Everything cool?
Yeah, I had a men's church conference yesterday. It was
Very
good.
cool.
Ironman Summit in Emporia, Kansas. So that was
nice. Super cool.
My
Ryan?
week consisted of rebuilding my server rack. I almost said rebuilding my rack, but that could have been taken out of context. So I made sure to specify there.
I'll make that a short.
Yeah, you should. I spent the week rebuilding my rack.
Oh, mercy. Now, if you're a female, that would come across
I can
a little
do
weird. No, you can.
Yeah, in the modern age.
That'd be a little
Don't
weird.
discriminate, Michael.
I know. I'll get banned here on
This
on
is a
YouTube.
discrimination-free place.
For sure.
It has no
safe
space.
Safe space, man. Safe space. So, well, cool, man. Well, let's go ahead and just jump into it. I'm just going to kind of go through, and I'll even kind of comment on some of your questions and stuff here. So let's just get right into it. MQ says, still deciding if I should buy a second PB1000 Pro or go for the PB2000 Pro as a second sub. I know it sounds bad. I mean, I try not to help people spend their money, but it's a whole lot easier to spend your money than my money. But I always try to recommend, try to get the best subwoofer you can. And then if that subwoofer doesn't like provide everything that you need, whether it's smooth bass response from seat to seat or output, then get another one just like it down the road, or even a third. I just find when you buy, and we've talked about this on the channel many times, that when you buy something based off of just price alone to save some money, I found, at least in my own personal life, that I just end up regretting that most of the time, and I'll end up selling it, losing money on the deal, and buying kind of what I wanted anyway. And so sometimes it's beneficial just to be a little bit patient, save up some extra money, sell some stuff in your garage to pay for it, do whatever you got to do. And because there's probably not a huge difference in price between the 1000 and 2000.
The obvious answer is sell the 1000 and buy two 2000s.
There you go. Yeah.
Spend more money.
Right. So that's kind of my thought, but I don't know, man. If you can swing the 2000, I think you'll find that you may like the 2000, and like Ryan said, you may end up selling the 1000 and getting another one. So,
but in all seriousness, if it's in the budget, get as big of a. My recommendation is, whenever you're buying one sub, get as big of a sub as you can afford, and then add another one of those later, or sell the one you have and get a bigger one. It's always a journey. There is a limit at some point. Like once you reach a certain level of sub, and I think you guys can attest to this, that once you get to that point, there's no more upgrading. It's just adding more. It's just, what's your journey until you get to that point, or do you take the shortcut and go straight to that point?
Sure. So Michael agrees, says, man, get the bigger one. So never have enough subs. I get it, man. What do you think, Jonathan?
Anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything to add. They're both 12-inch drivers. I just looked them up to kind of refresh myself. It looks like there might be another 2 dB difference between them or something.
Okay, so I was thinking they were different sizes because I'm not as familiar with their smaller subs.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have them to my fingertips either. I had to look it up. Both of them are 12s, and there's not a whole lot of difference. One might be tuned a couple hertz lower or something from what I was looking. It's just a forum comparison. So a couple dB, couple dB less.
So it might not be that big of a deal.
No, they probably play all right. Realistically, what the guys are telling you though probably is, and it depends on what you're after, right? You might consider moving from a 12 to a 15 if you're gonna make a significant upgrade, or 16 in the case of SVS.
That's a good point. That incremental upgrades are okay, but you may not be able to tell the difference, and you do need to do something substantial to be able to make it worth your while.
See, Ryan wants you to spend a lot of money.
I'm a terrible influence in everybody's wallet.
That's hilarious. I think we all kind of influence each other.
But I walk the walk. I'm a terrible influence on my own wallet. Okay.
True.
So that's
true.
I don't just tell others. I do it to myself.
Yeah, for sure. Chris, good to see you, man. I know you got to work tonight, so Chris is going to be at Mwave, man. So he was there last year. Excited for that. Ryan Smith says, hello, hope everyone's doing well. Can you use enough sealed subs to get a good home theater experience for movie watching? SVS SB3000 as an example. Well, you're looking at two guys that have sealed subs. You got the 4000 ELFs.
Yeah, and then I got sealed in the back. The 4000s are kind of an anomaly because the port really doesn't activate until like 16 hertz.
It's just a crazy beast.
It is.
But yeah, to answer your question, Ryan, I think absolutely you can get really good bass response from sealed subwoofers. For the most part, ported subwoofers tend to have more output than sealed. I really didn't like the sealed for the most part until I got to 18s and I had multiple of them. I tried the SB. Actually, I've reviewed the SB3000. I'll be honest, for music, that thing punches like crazy. Really, really small form factor. I was really impressed with it. For movies, I definitely like the PB3000 better. And then I tried the SB16s. That was actually the first subwoofer that I ever reviewed on the channel from SVS. Actually, it was the first subwoofer that I reviewed on the channel. And it was good. It was cool. I had two of them, but I was craving more, man. And I'm kind of a bass junkie, man. I want to feel it. I want it to really punch me in the chest. And so then I had them send me the PB16s. I ended up buying those. I sold my Klipsch. I had 4 Klipsch RSW15s. So, but yeah, I think you can definitely get good bass response. Part of it is how far are you from the subs? How big is your room? How loud do you like to listen to it? But that's my take on it. What do you guys think?
Well, Jonathan's room with his sealed subs, he needs way more bass. He's totally lacking.
So Jonathan has 8 18s that are sealed. You can kind of see, well, right behind his chair, he's got 3 of them up in the front. He's got 5 of them. So he's got a pretty baller setup there. So it'd be quite a bit more output than what the SB3000
just a little bit
will produce. So
the SB3000, does anyone know a max SPL on it? I was trying to web search for and where I'm going with that is you're looking for, if you want to be able to do reference, you're looking for at least 115 dB. And if it's a 13-inch, it's not really gonna even really be close to being able to do that. So you're gonna need multiples.
Yeah.
And every time you double the amount of subs, if they're not sitting on top of each other, which would be co-located, if they're like on opposite side of the room, a left and a right, or a front and a back, you're only getting 3 dB for each doubling. So from 1 to 2 is 3 dB more, and from 2 to 4 is 3 dB more, and from 4 to 8 is 3 dB more. So the reason I even bring this up is it depends on what you're after. I guess you're after some extra volume, right? Because you're saying, can I just keep adding them? Absolutely, you can. But there's a very big realm of diminishing returns on that, right? Because now you got to, if you want to get 3 dB more, you got to jump from 8 to 16, and then from 16 to 32. So it's not like every time you add a sub, you're getting a lot more volume. It's every time you double the subs, you get a slight bit more volume.
So given Audioholics, the maximum output of the SB3000, was that your question?
Yeah, that's what he's asking about.
Is 16 hertz. This is before they encounter distortion. That's too bad to go any further. 16 hertz, 87.3 decibels. 20 hertz is 93.6. 25 is 98.7. 31.5 is 104.8. And then you don't break the 105 quote unquote reference, and reference can vary depending on what it is, but you don't break that threshold until you get up into 40, which is 111.
Yeah, and I mean, you'll have room gain and stuff like that. So there's a lot of, and you'll have EQ pluses or minuses.
Sure.
So there's a lot of variables there. But I guess what I'm saying is because you don't gain a whole lot by increasing your multiples, because it's you have to pair it and double it every time.
Right.
It almost makes sense if you're really chasing that reference level that you start with a bigger sub. Don't start with a 13, start with an 18 or a 21 if you're really after reference levels, because it doesn't matter whether you start with an 8 or 18 or a 24. Those doubling characteristics we just talked about.
Yep.
It's all
It
the
all
same.
stays the same. I'd say 18 is the sweet spot as far as price for performance. You go over that and things get a little more expensive when you start chasing the numbers.
Yeah. So one thing he's looking for is just better seat to seat response. So that you can get with smaller subs if your main goal isn't like massive output.
Absolutely.
So again, I think it goes back to what Jonathan was saying. Really depends on like your goals. You know, what are you after? What are you chasing? You know, if it's massive output, SP3000 probably isn't going to do it. And even a couple of them may not satisfy, just depending on how big your room and how loud you like it. But they're cool subs, man. I mean, seriously, they were fun. I was cranking a mess out of it. But it was for music and it was just slamming. I'm like, Jacob, my son, he lived at home at that time. And I said, you got to come and check out this thing, dude. It was so cool, man. It was really, really awesome. I was very pleased with his performance, like I said, for music. And it was just certain notes that it excelled at. I mean, it was slam. I'm like, dang, that's crazy. Cause I think it's a 12-inch sub. So it was like 13 by 13. We're talking a little bitty box, man, just barely bigger than the actual, width of the actual subwoofer itself. So pretty cool stuff. All right. Let me go back up here. Yeah. All right, here we go. RR says in a previous live segment, Ryan talked about Storm Audio's bass management in the processor where you could integrate the sub with the actual speaker. What other processors have that feature?
I don't know of any other processors that have that feature.
I think Denon and Marantz is coming out with it with their newest models, but I don't know if it's ready yet or if it's a firmware release. I haven't caught that part of it. And maybe it's not the exact same, Ryan, so you correct me if this is wrong, but the point being that the new Denon and Marantz have 4 different subwoofer outputs and you can put them corner located in your room and they'll relate the bass to the speaker in the corner they're in. I mean, that's the goal of that
you can set up zones and whatever channels are around them and route channels to those specific subs. And then when sound comes out of that speaker, it'll route the LFE channel to those subs so you can locate the bass. And Storm gives you a bunch of other stuff on top of that.
Right.
But that's the gist of expert bass management. There's a bunch of other things, but that's what it's known for.
Tony says data sat will.
Oh, that's a good point, Tony. Data sat will, but who uses data sat now?
I know you don't ever hear that name. Like I think Tony's the only one that I've ever heard it from. Oh, he said Trenov will too. Oh, hang on. He said Trenov and data sat will. All right. So we got a couple options for you then. Ryan's like, I'm gonna Google that.
The only real option is Storm, obviously.
That's right. I love it, man. I love it. All right. Joel says, when does sound dB matching? When doing sound, I told you, man, I'm sleep deprived. When doing sound dB matching, what dB do you recommend for upfiring Atmos speakers? Would they all still be level matched at the same
75? Yeah. Play your
because
receiver
you're
test
measuring because you're measuring from your listening position.
That's right.
So that means that those may have to be higher, but you're still measuring in the same location.
Right. It's where your ears will be that you'd want that 75 dB.
Doesn't change.
Cool. Good question, man. Ryan Smith. Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing. We did that one, right? I must have skipped down to that. Yeah.
No, we haven't done this one. We haven't done this one.
Seems familiar. All right. Hello. I'll tell you. All right. Sleep deprivation.
We did this one. Can you use enough sealed subs to get good theater experience? Yeah.
Oh.
Wow. Somebody else is sleep deprived.
I guess so. I haven't been paying attention.
You commented on this one.
Answered the question, right.
But I didn't read the question.
True. Peter says 2 subs in the front of the room versus 4 at all corners. Is there a difference other than more output? I'm looking at upgrading, but I don't know which way to go with.
I think it depends on the room.
It does, but generally speaking, 4 corners or even 4 mid walls is going to have more uniformity across your seat than 2 in front.
Now, wouldn't you also, you're definitely going to get, well, I guess he says other than output. Yeah, you'd get more output just because you've got kind of what they call corner loading. Typically.
Yeah, but I do not really like making assumptions. There's some things that can come into play there. You should get more output, but I mean, one sub could be in a null and you could cause some problems. It depends on the room. Most cases, as Jonathan said, 4 is going to be better than 2. But it may not give you a whole lot.
I think you could dial those in, though.
There's a Harman white paper on subwoofer placement that we've referenced here before. I'll dig it up and then Youthman can put it in the chat.
Okay.
It's a fun read for even a novice because it gives you a lot of testing data, and you can just take a second and digest that. Basically, for uniformity among your seats, usually mid-wall is recommended according to their studies. So
that's hard to do for most people.
Yeah, and then 4 corners is good, and you typically get a little bit of boundary gain. But if it's more like on concrete walls or stone walls, because subwoofer based frequencies don't really care so much about drywall. So if you're kind of like in a bedroom in the middle of a basement, for instance, you're not going to get a lot of boundary gain on the walls or the corners.
I've got like all exterior walls in mine, except for the rear wall. Yeah, makes sense there. Michael says, question, if you have 2 subs that are not the same brand and you replace one so that they're now matching, do you have to recalibrate the subs? That's a great question. I like recalibrating anytime I change out something other than like a DVD player, Blu-ray player, 4K player, that kind of thing. Anything that is in that signal chain, that's just my personal preference. Do you need to? I would think they would have different characteristics, but if they're placed in the exact same spot, would that really matter?
Yes,
it does. Yes, you should run it again because they'll probably have a different HPF setting on the amp, especially if they're vastly different subs and their output may be different, and there's it matters.
You may have an EQ in your sub that's staying, that's compensating for the one that's getting replaced, and then you're just going to cause all kinds of problems. As an example, today after I finished putting my rack together, thank you, I was trying to listen to the subs and make sure that everything was right, because some things had changed around, and my front subs were not playing very well. They just looked like complete and utter poo in Rue. They just, the frequency response was not good. Okay. And they're EQ'd. I've been down this road. I mean, Jonathan knows I've spent tons of time calibrating these subs, and it just did not look right. And what had happened is they were plugged in backwards. So the sub that was on the right was actually getting the EQ from the one that was on the left, and the one that was on the left was getting the EQ from the one on the right. And it totally screwed up the EQ. I mean, it was horrible. So I use that as an example because if you've EQ'd one and you don't change that and you replace the other sub, you can create a disaster and things can get really bad because that EQ that you've created is based on what was there previously, and things change.
Okay.
And it is very well probably going to make things worse.
Right. Another factor is that the built-in amps, especially on a store-bought sub, retail sub, they might have different delays built into them. So
absolutely. Yes.
So your different brands and so forth, your receiver will account for that between your subwoofer 1 and your subwoofer 2 distances as it sets your auto EQ. If you swap that sub out, the timing's not going to be right.
Yep. That's a great point.
See, that's why I invite you guys on here, man. You know way more than I do.
We could just be making it up.
Hey, it sounded good. I believed it. Chadman says, how important is it to have acoustic treatments around your main LCRs? If you have an acoustic transparent screen, no baffle walls, so this would be difficult in my setup. I would love to do this in my setup. And the biggest reason is I've climbed up in, that area in the cabinet. And one time I was even recording a video and I climbed up in there to kind of show people what does it look like behind my cabinet. And as soon as I stuck my head in there and I said something, it was like this crazy echo chamber. And I'm thinking, there's really no reason to have any sound reflected off my front wall, like zero. Sound that are coming from the main LCR you know, if it hits the back wall and if it happens to come back to the front wall, you don't want it bouncing back again to your listening position. You want to stop that. So I think it's a great idea to put acoustic treatment around your LCR. Jonathan, in your setup, you've got that, I think, right?
I just have a little bit of treatment, and I probably should have more. One of my favorite rooms that I've ever been in had 12 inches of ripped blue jeans in big bags hanging down. It was a full foot thick.
Interesting.
And it was a dead front concept, and I really liked that. So it's the same thing you're talking about. The gentleman's name on the forum is Craig John, and I really liked what he'd done with his room for that. And yeah, so I agree. If you can deaden the front of your front wall, it's a good thing to do.
Right.
And you say that you don't have a baffle wall, but you're saying that you have an acoustic transparent screen. Your baffle wall, baffle wall is kind of a loose definition. You can look it up, and there's a lot of different ways to define it. I call my front wall baffle wall, and it's nothing more than a drywall, studded drywall thing, and there's a storage room behind there. You can treat that wall. Like, you can put acoustic foam on there, or you can put rock wool on there, front or back of the drywall. It will both help, just at different frequencies. Front if you want to absorb the higher frequencies, back if you want to absorb the lower frequencies. And so yeah, there's benefits just treating that acoustic wall that your screen's hanging on. Yeah.
I definitely would love to do it. I know it's going to be a lot of work, you know, for me. I mean, to just do the wall, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But if I want to try to bring it out, because my cabinet's like 4 foot thick, so I'd have to do some pretty significant.
Pack it up, Chad, man.
There's a lot of guys. Yeah, there's a lot of guys on the AVS forum groups that basically just put pink fluffy or rock wool in between all the speakers. So if you take your screen down and you just basically stack it top to bottom, left to right around your speaker, so it's just absorption in there.
Yep.
Okay, so that makes sense, because then you're just kind of putting it in between and then going on top, and if you have to trim it, so then you've basically still got a gap between that and the wall, my front wall.
Yep.
That might be a little bit easier, but I still want it to look cool too, and look, you know, so I'd have to put some kind of fabric even over the front of that. So I don't know, a lot to think about, but I'm with you, Chad, man. I'd like to do that in my setup. I think it would be beneficial. But I just haven't done it yet, and I still enjoy my system. So it's chasing that, you know, that last incremental pieces, and there's always something to do in our theater room. So, but definitely there's some great resources online. I'm going to slide down here. Joel had a super chat. Joel had a question here. Appreciate that, man. He says, if a new movie comes out and you want to see it, would you stream it or rent a physical 4K disc?
Depends on how much
I know my answer. Yeah. I think that's really, like, all right, prime example. If I had not have gone and seen Top Gun Maverick in the theater room, or in the theater, which I did, my local cinema, I absolutely would not have watched it on streaming. Like, zero desire. That's not a movie you want to do that on. Now, if Jessica says, hey, I want to watch a chick flick, absolutely, we're streaming that all day long. I mean, I'll be honest.
Screw your wife.
There's just no reason. Like, I don't need great audio. I don't even need great video, honestly. You can get decent audio and video out of streaming. Just those really, really good movies that I'm excited about watching, I'm not going to stream those. Jonathan?
I'm increasingly streaming more and more, but for the titles I'm really looking forward to, like Top Gun Maverick, I'll buy it. I'll buy it on disc. I don't rent as much as I used to. I used to go to Redbox quite frequently, but I kind of stopped. Streaming has sort of taken that over for me, because Redbox, a lot of times I was getting frustrated because you'd get the disc and it wouldn't have Atmos on it anyway. They'd have knocked it down to the rental copy like a 7.1.
Yeah.
Well, my streaming services usually will give me Atmos still. So the video quality is not there and the sound quality is not there to the same degree as a physical disc. But if it's not something that I absolutely want to buy, then I do stream. I do stream more than I used to.
Yeah.
And I know Ryan's got it all covered because he's with the kaleidoscope. He's got anything he wants. Yeah.
He's fancy like that. He's fancy like Applebee's.
I don't know how I feel about that comment.
Brad says, what's your favorite home theater chairs for less than $2,000? And I'm assuming, is that $2,000 each.
I'm going to assume that's per chair.
Yeah, that's what I would think. There's probably a lot of them under $2,000.
And guys, I'm not taking any more questions because we got enough to go through.
I would
30
think,
minutes.
right?
Yeah, you got a lot of options under $2,000.
Because a lot
per
of them are
chair,
around
though.
that.
Yeah, there's almost all of them.
Yeah. So unless you're talking about 3 seats, then I think you got quite a bit. I mean, Valencia's the only company I've ever had that has sent me products. I've had a couple other companies say they were wanting to send me some. Seatcraft, I think HT Market has some, but never heard from them. I mean, we were in
what
talks,
I've noticed about Valencia is their seats are a lot heavier than virtually anybody else's. So I'm going to say Valencia.
Yeah, I mean, I've been pleased with mine, and they've got different models.
Partial.
Yeah, Jonathan's got some new seats they're coming in.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a strong opinion on this. This is so subjective. Go sit in some seats at a store and see what you like. You know, depending on your body
Furniture
type.
Mart, I think they've got them, right?
They have some.
Yeah.
If you got a Nebraska Furniture Mart, just find something that works for you. But I think $2,000 is going to be, that's a pretty nice little budget there. So Chris Jones says, anyone know anything about the new Klipsch subs? A great question, man. Actually, somebody asked me just literally, I think yesterday after I posted the short, Klipsch has, I don't know if they're a new sub, but it's a reference Premier. See if I can find it. It was like the RP 1600. See if I can pull it up here.
While you're looking for that.
Yeah, hit it.
Brian Zeroth asks, do you put your lens cap back on your projector after you've finished in your theater?
Nope.
Nope.
Too much work, man. Dust it off every once in a while, but that's about it.
And Brad Halberstadt asks, for budget laser projectors, what's your favorite under $7,000? Over $7,000 is what his question says.
Budget over 7K?
I'm going to think that the budget under 7K. And for under 7K, it's probably going to be the Epson LS12000.
You don't have a whole lot of options under 7K. Yeah. I mean, I guess you got some of the business class stuff, and you got Optima, perhaps.
You got the NP5.
That's not laser, though.
Oh, yeah.
Bold.
That's true.
So you got Sony's option, the 5000. You got Epson's option, the LS12000. You got some Optimas, BenQ, Michael just mentioned.
Yeah.
And business stuff. There's not a whole lot of options.
Epson.
Yeah. The LS12000 is pretty rocking, man. I think you'll enjoy it.
Jonathan hates his.
Buy Jonathan's. That's all I'm saying.
There's actually one for sale in the Kansas City thread. If
there is, that's a great price. It's not mine. I like mine. I'm keeping it.
So, Chris, coming back to your question, if you Google or go to YouTube and search for this model, it's called the RP 1600 SW. There's I think it's like a German company that did a video, and it actually has for their subs. So it's basically, I think, like a 12-inch version, a 13, a 4, something like that. So there's about 10, a 12. I don't even know what it would be.
16.
I don't. Yeah, they've got that's the 16. I would think 13. A 12. Maybe they had a 13. I don't know, but they had 4 models that they had side by
it's
side.
Probably an 8, a 10, a 12, and a 16 or something.
Yeah, something like that. I didn't watch the video because I couldn't understand it, but you could see it and it looked pretty cool. So what I don't know is this the Klipsch, the SVS killer that they kind of claimed that they were going after? I'm just not sure that this is going to, here you go. So you can kind of see them stacked up right here.
We'll see.
I'm not sure that that's going to be able to compete with the Monoprice 16 or the what's the other one, the PB 16. So, and then I looked at this chart here. So they've got a little bit more output right here, but
that's not them. That's the second competitor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Where was it? Oh,
it's the gold one.
Okay, so I read it. I was looking at that yesterday. I'm going, how can that be Okay, so that makes me feel better about this thing. I thought this was theirs, the blue, and I'm like,
Michael's
why
like,
would
this is
this
is terrible.
why would you be bragging about that? Okay, I feel better then. Okay, so we do got some good output, so they're showing more output. So interesting. Okay, so again, we're just kind of guessing on how it's going to perform till we.
That graph is crap, Michael. I mean,
Is
look
it?
at the scale on it. I don't even know what it's looking at. Go
Well,
back up
yeah.
to the graph.
At that
It
point,
has
it's like 80 dB.
It has 100 dB at the top,
Right, and 50 down here.
and you're like at a 75 or 80 point. Like, what in the
Yeah.
world are they showing here?
Reference
I wouldn't.
ants.
I will wait until some reviews come
Oh,
out.
Like I
on
said, I
whatever
mean,
point.
we would literally be guessing, at how it's going to perform. But there are some new subs now. Again, I sent them an email today just asking, is this the replacement? Like, is this? And if you look on their website, I think a lot of the reference Premiere, they're not on there. The SPL series isn't on there that I'm reviewing now, so I'm not real sure what's going on there. So time will tell. So good question.
One thing you want to watch out for when that Klipsch comes out is try to see if it looks like it's ported, so it may be immaterial, but the port tunes on Klipsch sometimes are higher than they'll put in the specs. So if it says it's like a 20 hertz tune, it might actually be like a 25 hertz port tune.
Okay. Yeah.
So make sure and read reviews on that, because for home theater, in my opinion, you really do want to get 20 hertz as kind of a bottom. I mean, that's like start there and go down to 15 or 10 if you want from there.
Yeah.
But I'm excited for more competition. I mean, if it's a good sub, I'm excited about it.
Yep.
Go Klipsch.
So Brian says, do you put the lens?
We already did that.
All right.
Were you paying attention, Michael?
Dude, I'm multitasking. I was looking up the screenshot from that website.
You should maybe the audience didn't pay attention. We could just keep answering the same questions.
That's funny. All right, here we go. So Christian says, hey, can you recommend some affordable subwoofers, because they are pretty pricey? Now, everybody's idea of affordable is probably different. My guess is by affordable, you might be talking like $500 and below. Would that be maybe a good assumption, or $600 or $700? So what are some of those options? Definitely under $1,000. What would that be? Any recommendations?
I think Bic's pretty good, way down on the price range.
But I mean, are they good though? I guess
they're as good as what you're going to get for that price point.
Yeah.
Good is subjective. I mean, you can't compare a couple $100 sub to a $5,000 or $6,000 sub. It's going to lose every time.
Yeah.
So in that price range, I think Bic's really
Christian,
good.
Here's my recommendation for you. And I don't know where you live, because we've got an audience literally all over the world. But in my area in Florida, there's a lot of used equipment, And so if the budget is low, I'm a big proponent of checking out used gear, because a lot of times you can get a 5-year-old sub. I've bought 10-year-old subwoofers and rocked them for many years and paid like $300 for them, and they were probably $1,500 subs new. So that's definitely an option. But as far as brands that are under, between say $500-$700, does Shoe make anything like that? Or Rhythmic?
Yes, they do.
They're basic ones?
They do.
Okay.
They have 12-inch and they have 15-inch and so forth. So you can absolutely pursue that.
So I would 100% push you to that direction. There's a company called Shoe, which is HSU, and then there's another one called Rhythmic. It's like R.
Rhythmic's a little more expensive.
Yeah, I don't think Rhythmic has any cheap ones unless.
Okay. So maybe just Shoe. So at least check them out. I think Klipsch used to have some decent ones. The R115SW used to be $750 for a 15-inch subwoofer, and it was nice. It was actually a really good performer. Wasn't amazing, but for that price, it was pretty rocking.
I do want to clarify that we're not discounting Rhythmic. It's just that Rhythmic doesn't have anything in
under $1,000.
Yeah, I mean 100%. They might, but they're not as cost.
Yeah, at least check out those two options. Brands. I think you might be able to,
or build your own.
That would be an incredible option.
Flat packs from GSG, a little bit of weight though.
100%.
I got started with the subwoofers with like car audio subs, and so I mean those are a dime a dozen. Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, and
or JBL, Best Buy sale.
They're not going to be tuned low. A lot of them are tuned for 30-35 hertz.
Sure.
But they'll be fun, and it depends on what your budget is. I mean, if you're a broke college student and you got $300 to spend on a sub, that might not be a bad way to go.
Nope. Lots of options.
Totally agree. Yeah, for sure. I saw a super chat. Let me jump on this one. Brian, appreciate the $20 super chat. Just a huge thank you to you guys for reminding me of a particular return window I barely made. Can't wait for the AV10, man. Super pumped for you. That is a beast of an AVR, man. I mean, a processor. It's not even AVR. That thing is crazy, crazy. So super excited for you, man. Brian, he was one of my patrons, and we were on a call the other day doing our monthly Zoom, and dude, he's got all this gear and he's already wanting to upgrade it.
Upgrade Audyssey is hitting him before the theater even takes shape.
That's hilarious.
But his AV10 sitting in my garage. I've already dropped it a couple times for him just to break it in.
Nah.
Make sure that everything's fastened correctly.
No, is that the one you asked me to come over and kick? I'm trying to remember.
Oh man.
I made sure Sheldon, when he came over to get his Epson, that made sure, hey, kick this for me. I got to make sure that when the customer gets it, it's all broken in.
That's awesome, man. But I'm excited for Brian, man. He's got a cool space. He's going to have a beautiful setup, and he just got to make some decisions on, is he going with in walls for that front LCR? He's got some space limitations. We talked about everything.
He's got plenty
Subwoofers.
of space.
So I think he was just trying to not have the speakers kind of impede into the room, because he's got that stairway coming down right at the front. So super excited for you, man. Frank V says, the old ported versus sealed subs. What are your individual preferences and why? Curious to hear from all three amigos. So I know what my take is on this. I'm going to let you guys start. In general.
We did a blind subwoofer shootout in 2012, which was really interesting. We had the top.
We're going to do it at Mwave.
At the time, we had Seton Submersives, we had JTR Captivators, we had Epic Empires.
So you had the big boys.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, it was the best of the best. We had some 4 do-it-yourself 15s that somebody brought in that were sealed. I mean, it was like it was a good. We had an orbit shifter. We had a variance of alignments and types, and it was blind.
Okay.
And I thought what was really funny about it was, people had strong preferences.
Yeah.
And they were subjective. It wasn't universal.
Sure.
And they weren't what people necessarily thought they would be going in, which is the best part.
Okay.
Because, for instance, I'm going to call him out. I had a friend named Greg, Husker Omaha, on the forums. He used to tease me day in, day out about my captivators having port noise. He'd say, like, I can hear your port noise from Omaha. You know, like, you must have been just dogging me.
Oh, Greg.
Well, guess which one he liked the best in the blind contest.
Wow.
He liked, and he was always talking about how sealed was so superior, and he ended up liking the ported captivators the best in the blind contest.
Wow. And all right, so in all fairness, I've never done a blind comparison between sealed and ported. So, you know, and that's one thing that we try to do at Mwave, is kind of take that subjectivity out of it as best as we can, so that you can just experience some of these cool things side by side. Tony's excited. JTR wins. But the reality is that sometimes I think our biases and what our brains tell us we're hearing play a role in what we feel. I can share. So now it's like, I got nothing to say.
You can say it, because
So my thought.
Yeah, go ahead.
So my thought is, the subwoofers that I have reviewed, I've reviewed up to 15-inch sealed subwoofers, which was the SB16 from SVS. And like I said, they're great and everything. I had 2 of them, but I just wanted more. Like, I wanted to feel more bass from them. And so that's when I got the PB16s, and I'm like, oh yeah, that was the first time I had ever knocked anything off in the adjacent room. When I had the PB16s, I'm like, now we're talking, you know. And it wasn't
the real question is old ported versus sealed.
Yeah. I mean, what does that mean? Old ported.
I think he's talking about the old
argument
of ported versus
sealed. Yeah,
stuff.
right.
Age-old argument.
Yeah, I don't buy into the sealed or fast, ported or slow. I don't buy that. If you got a powerful, if it's well designed, you got a powerful amplifier, you can have a big driver that's fast and you know, you can have a ported that's fast, all that stuff. I don't think that really matters. I don't necessarily believe that a sealed sub is more musical. We hear that thrown around a lot of times. I've heard some incredible ported subs that sound phenomenal for music as well as movies. So I don't think that's it. I think it's more about the design and the implementation than it is sealed versus ported. But I like having sealed. Once I got to 18 and had multiple 18s, I like having sealed. And one of the biggest reasons is there's no port noise. When I had the PB16s, great subwoofers, but you try to do Edge of Tomorrow at reference, and that thing will sound like a fish out of water, just flopping around.
Yeah, but that's probably because you're getting below its tune.
Correct. And that's what I'm saying. So there's that side of it. You know, as long as you're not pushing it too far and too low, does phenomenal.
Like with my 4000s, I don't hear any port noise.
Yeah.
I might get blown backwards if I stand in front of the ports, but I don't hear any port noise.
But you've got two 18s in a ported
versus
a single 16 in a ported.
Frank, the real difference here is that ported traditionally is going to give you more output in your like mid-range area, and then sealed's going to be able to dig deeper in the frequency range. You're going to get, like, if I was running only sealed, I could very easily be flat down to 5 hertz very easily.
And that's what I am in my room.
But I roll off at 10 because my 4000s don't like to go that low. So I've cut everything off. I haven't chased that. And I still think it's great. But the 4000s give me more output in the mid-range. Do I need it or am I using it? Probably not. But that's traditionally the difference. I don't really look at it anywhere past that.
I think you can get great sound with both.
I think they do have, and it might take a lot of experience with it, but I think they do have a little bit different sound and presentation. And it's subtle and it's nuanced. But we did, I mean, over the course of the last, they haven't done a whole lot in the last 5 years because we kind of avalanched it all in up front like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
We had multiple subwoofer shootouts. And a lot of those subwoofer shootouts in multiple different rooms. There was the subwoofer from JTR Captivator, like the ported subwoofer, and there was the Seton Submersive, and those two were almost in all the contests.
Right.
And they're fairly reasonable. At that time, it was the Captivator 2400 or the Captivator Pro. They have a slightly different presentation. The Captivator is more of a tactile, violent. I mean, if you go on ABS forum, there's people that are doing scientific experiments with this kind of stuff. It basically has more energy because the port is activating too, and so particles in the room, like they have these tests they're doing with these accelerometers. The ported has more tactile feedback at the same volume if you're close enough proximity to the subwoofer. So it's kind of interesting stuff, right?
Right.
How audible that is, I'm not going to say that like everyone can tell the difference, and you certainly can't tell it the first time. And it might be subtle enough that you really have to like be attuned to it. But I feel like I've had enough experience at this point. I could probably tell you in most cases which is which, and I don't have a strong preference one way or the other. I just have been around them a lot.
All right, Greg.
I feel like I
put
could
that
tell.
to the test at Mwave.
By all means. Now, the thing you had mentioned earlier, Michael, about slow for ported and all that kind of stuff, that's nonsense talk.
Yeah.
Based
but
on the
you hear that a lot.
And I think it's probably founded in some legitimate experiences, but it's founded on that budget end of stuff where basically they don't have the proper HPF filters in place and the sub's allowed to overplay, and the woofer loses control. Once it goes below that port tune, it's basically just swinging in the wind. So distortion goes way up, harmonic distortion goes way up, and you can hear that. That's audible. So it's not tight anymore. It's not clean anymore, but it's not because of the alignment or the design. It's because it's
just a
made for price component.
Yes.
If you have a very competent ported subwoofers like Ryan's JTR ULF 4000s and a very competent sealed like Michael's sealed JTR, the difference is going to be very subtle. It'll be a difference, and if you listen closely, you'll hear it. But it'll be subtle enough that you may not care. That's my experience.
Cool, man. Great question,
Let's
Frank.
Rapid through these because we got a lot left in only 10 minutes.
Sorry, Ryan. How did the Buckeye amps sound?
Great.
Subjectively, or
no? They're great. I mean, it is subjective because I haven't measured them in my room, but
it's like how do
they're
they
great.
sound?
My
they crank.
15As, my Martin Logan big boys, haven't eaten them for lunch. The purifiers are kicking, and the 502s that I'm using for everything else have more than enough power for the rest of the theater. So they're great. No issues. I love the minimalistic approach and no complaints.
Did it get rid of your ground noise completely?
I have no noise in my theater now.
Oh, that's real nice.
Yeah.
And you didn't change wiring at all. It was just the amps that did the reduce.
I mean, I had to rewire things and unplug and plug things back in, but no.
Very good.
It's good to know. Christian says, any chance we'll have the Klipsch Jubilee, which is the big
Jubilee would be cool.
Yeah. And the RTJ at Mwave this year. I am attending. Excited to have you at Mwave. That's going to be super, super cool. For those of you that aren't familiar with it, I'm just going to drop the link here. You can check out the website, Midwest AV Experience. It's an event that we're putting on July the 14th through the 16th. This is year 2, expanding the event, better venue. It's going to be awesome. So definitely come check us out. So we'll have some fun there. But honestly, it's really just up to Klipsch. If they want to participate, I've sent them the information, reach out to them. So if they want to come, it's up to them what they bring. Same thing with JTR, RTJ. I've talked to Jeff. And so Jeff has thought about bringing what he used to bring to Axpona if he's able to come. So I would love that. And I'd love for Tony to be able to just really crank up the
Tony, make it happen. Come on.
Yeah. That'd be fun, man.
Do it.
So, Chris says, good evening, gentlemen. Do Valencia theater seats have charging capability for the Lightning? So they have USB-C. I don't think they have USB. They don't have,
they have for the lighting.
Do you say lighting or lightning?
It says lighting.
All right. Do they have, what does that even mean?
I think maybe it means so that you
Like
don't have to have them plugged in. I don't know.
Yeah, no. You gotta have them plugged in.
They do have charging ports, but it's USB-A.
I thought he was talking about like lightning for your phone. Okay. My bad, bro. Michael says, are any of you going to be testing the modest, I mean, nothing modest about that thing, Nakamichi Dragon 11.4.6 sound system? So I heard about it, saw some videos online on or at CES. Have y'all heard about that one?
I haven't. Tell me what you know.
Pretty big. I don't know a lot about it, but let me look it up.
Nakamichi's got a great reputation, but I don't know anything about the Dragon.
It's an old company. I mean, they've been around. It says 75 years of audio excellence on their website. I'm trying to find. There we go. I think this is it here. All right, let me share my screen. We're just going to go through this real quick because I don't have any information on it. But this thing's basically a sound bar with a couple of powered subwoofers and then a pair of surrounds. It's pretty expensive.
AMT tweeters. I like that.
But look at that, man. This thing's got crazy upfiring drivers. So I don't know. Somebody let me know in the chat how much the Dragon is. So if you remember seeing stuff from CES, just drop it in the chat and we'll throw it up there. Yeah, 11.4.6 sound or Dragon soundbar from Pedro. Let me know in the chat.
$3,500. It says.
Yeah, I told you it's not cheap, man. $3,500. So it better be cool. But I don't know, man.
It's got its place.
Yeah. But the people
that
heard it,
I mean, it's probably
the people that heard it said it's pretty remarkable what it can do especially for a sound bar.
So they're apparently reintroducing that name. When you type in Nakamichi Dragon, apparently there was like a 1980s tape deck from Nakamichi that was also called the Dragon.
Right.
Make sure you get the right Dragon. For
yeah.
For $3,500.
You're like, oh man. That's funny, man. Let's see. Mr. Winger says, Dirac Live versus Audyssey. Great question, man. We actually did a room correction comparison at Mwave last year. Now, I was not able to be in that room. I was kind of hosting another event on the main stage. So, Ryan, you had a chance to pop in and out of that. Jonathan, did you get a chance to see that one?
I did.
What were some of the thoughts, feedback, and your experience, and maybe what some other people were saying?
Go ahead, Ryan. I think you probably spent more time in there than I did.
So we learned a lot from that comparison, in that it wasn't necessarily the most objective or unbiased. We let Dirac, we let them all do their normal thing without any room curves, without anything. and people unanimously chose the ones with more bass that was tighter. So Audyssey had more bass, a little bit more bass, but it wasn't, from what people told us, it wasn't as tight. Arc won, because it had more bass. Dirac didn't have as much bass as the others, because without a house curve, it just did flat, and nobody really likes flat. So, and we measured it, and it was flat. Like it went flat. So I personally I like Dirac because of the flexibility and the platforms that it can come on. Most of my Dirac experience, though, comes on the Storm, which is top tier when it comes to Dirac. I have no experience on Dirac when it comes to like Onkyo or what's going to happen with Sound United when they release their stuff. So I don't know. And I know that the Audyssey apps and stuff give more flexibility. I've just never been a huge fan of what Audyssey's done. I think they're great for the money, though, so I can't really fault them for that. Jonathan, you have a lot of experience with Audyssey.
Yeah, at Mwave, the Audyssey calibration was not on point, and I don't know if it needed to be run again, or if there was something wrong with it, but I definitely remember when I sat in the front row, the front center speaker was bottoming out the woofers in those towers and making a bad noise, and I pointed it out to Bob, who was running the thing, and he said, yeah, we know it was doing that, but we just let them run, and you know what they did, they did.
They goofed it up.
Yeah, he's like, that's not on us. We
did that because we felt like that's what most people would do.
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean,
so
you're gonna run it, and as long as it sounds decent in your room, you're gonna leave it.
Right. Or it had set the center to large, and that was not when we were doing those demos with the deep bass. It was bottoming out the tower, so not sounding great there. You know, good for the other ones for not doing that. They all sounded a little bit different. I from my experience with Auto EQ running, I kind of wonder how consistent that would be. Like if you ran it 5 times, would you
on
get
all
the
platforms
same measurements? And that's my concern with that whole thing. Well, with different mics, I mean, we've talked about that before, especially on those cheap systems, they use mass manufactured mics, and the tolerance on those mics is like plus or minus 2.5 dB. So you're at a 5 dB swing, and I've seen it on 2 of my Audyssey mics. I measured them with my Omni mic, my calibrated mic, and there was literally a 5 dB swing at the treble. So before I realized this, I had an old Onkyo 5508 Pre-Pro, and I'd run Audyssey, and I was like, the treble's too loud on this. I don't really like Audyssey here. Well, I went to a Denon, and those mics are all the same, right? They got the same part number on them. And anyone who says they're calibrated for the machine, that's not true. They're a mass manufactured, at least on the Onkyo side, and on the Sound United side, they're a mass manufactured puck mic, and they got the same barcode, and it's just off an assembly line. You don't get any tailoring to your system. Well, when I got that Denon, its mic wasn't 5 dB hot on the treble, and so all of a sudden now I liked Audyssey, right? And I was like, well, what's the deal here? So I just swapped the mics, and now all of a sudden my Denon was running real hot treble, and I was like, you know, that's super cruddy, right? Because you think you're getting something tailored for the system, make it reference, but if there's a 5 dB swing in there, it's a very big delta. And then you couple that with all the manufacturers, they're all going to have that. So take it with a grain of salt. That's what I would say.
Okay. So definitely some differences. I think the biggest difference, like Ryan said, is going to be what you're capable of doing with that software. So to me, Audyssey is almost plug and play. You run it, move your mic around, and it kind of does its thing, and you don't have to change anything. You just kind of let it do. You can make some small settings, you know, change your crossovers, your levels, level match, and that sort of thing, and kind of be done with it for the most part. With Dirac Live, with ARC from Anthem, definitely a lot more kind of tinkering that you can do with it. And some of it, I remember, now I haven't reviewed the new Arc Genesis, which is, I think, their latest version of Arc from Anthem. So I've got a unit in now that I'm excited to test out and kind of see how they've improved that. But initially, there were a lot of times I'm like, I don't know what to change on that. Like, I don't know what to check. I don't know what setting this is even for, or what do I use on that drop down menu, you know? So I think there's definitely some differences there in the implementation. And of course, you go up the ladder like Trinov, Storm, Those got a much higher learning curve kind of thing. So, but yeah, good question there. I'm going to keep blowing through these. Laverne says, is there a soundbar with Atmos preferable from Bowers and Wilkins that can possibly be used with a 5.1 theater to give it Atmos instead of Atoms?
The Sennheiser.
Now, can you use it with... So I think the question here, and some people have asked this before in previous podcasts, can you use a soundbar and pair it with a 5.1 theater? Typically, you're going to need to buy a soundbar that is a 5.1 kind of
or
theater
comes with its own satellites stuff.
Yeah.
Don't do that. You may be looking for something like a passive soundbar, which can.
That would work.
But you're going to need an AVR or something like an AVR to be able to do that.
Yeah, if it's got power in it, it's designed to work with their own kind of ecosystem. So it's going to be difficult to do that. John says, are JTR subs precise or just raw power? Looking to do both movies and 2-channel music.
I mean, I'm using JTR subs for my 2-channel, and I think it's some of the best 2-channel I've ever heard. So if that says anything. I primarily use my system for 2-channel.
Jonathan, you've heard a lot of JTR systems up there in Kansas City.
They're top notch. They're both. You don't have any concerns with that.
Nope.
Get them. Jamie says, what do you all recommend for speaker wire when building a new theater? I want to make sure they're all pretty much the same, but would like recommendations. So in my theater room, I've pretty much always used monoprice. I'm of the mindset that pure copper is pure copper. I don't care if you buy it from the most expensive brand speaker cable manufacturer out there or an inexpensive. Especially when you're talking about what Jonathan's talking about and doing like A/B comparison. There have been a lot of tests done over the years, and people have used coat hangers, and they're like, "Oh, I can hear a difference." And what they loved was a coat hanger. It's like,
do it blind.
Yeah. So I think you're good with whatever. Now, the only thing I would say is there are some, because like if you just search on Amazon for speaker wire, the cheaper ones, a lot of times they're not pure copper. Can y'all elaborate? Is it OCC?
CCA, you don't want copper coated aluminum.
Okay.
And if you do go that route, you need to get 3 gauge smaller than what it would be with the copper. And I say smaller because as the numbers come down, the copper gets thicker. Okay. So if you were going to buy, if you wanted a 14 gauge copper, because that's what the engineering tables told you to do, then you actually need 10. 11. Yeah, or 10.
Yeah, wow.
10 gauge CCA.
And that's a big honking
So thicker wire, smaller number.
Yeah.
So there's there's impurities in copper, and there is differences, but you won't hear it or measure it.
Yeah. I say just find something that fits your budget, the style you want. I mean, I don't care what it looks like.
So something to consider though is the gauge of the wire depending on the run that you need to do.
100%.
Longer the run, the lower the gauge.
There's a table I put in chat. And you can look that up. It'll tell you what you look at, what ohm there is, and you look at what distance you need, and it'll tell you what gauge you need to avoid any audible sound. So it's a pretty good table.
That was genius. I just copied and pasted it in the private chat. That's not
typically you're going to want to do. I typically recommend people do like 14 gauge. Most of the time, you're not going to need 12 gauge. A lot of people put 12 gauge in because they're like, oh, well, it's supposed to be better. Unless you're running really long distances, you're not going to need it, and it's just a wasted expense.
Yeah.
But definitely have a look to make sure that you're not going to need something of a lower gauge. Sometimes you will, but for most cases, you shouldn't.
So, chat, I just dropped 3 links. These are ones Jonathan had linked to earlier for different topics. So if he mentioned he was going to grab some of those links, those are over in the chat. So yeah, I'm with you, Ryan. I like 14 gauge. 12 gauge is a little bit harder to deal with, especially when you're trying to work with like banana plugs. And it's just a thicker wire. So I've never found a need to go anything above 12 in my setup. Mikey says, I need advice on proper insulation behind a decoupled frame and studded false wall behind the front stage. What is the best way to fill a 3-foot void behind the studs? Trying to avoid a drum effect. Good question, man.
Rock wool.
Rock wool.
Yep.
I heard Jonathan mention jeans earlier.
Yeah, I mean, the guy that did that was just ripped jeans, like
Yeah.
shredded jeans, and he got them from a local clothing store or something, and it was just a cheap way to do it. It's cheaper than insulation. That's the reason he did it.
I mean, it depends on what you're trying to do in cost. It's as long as it's absorbing the needed frequencies, it shouldn't really matter.
Yeah.
But you are going to want to look at. There's a bunch of research and stuff that's been done on different types of materials. Rockwell's pretty universal.
Yeah.
Jeans, I've actually heard used quite a bit. There's a bunch of professional stuff that's used quite frequently, but can get a little bit more expensive. Pink Fluffy doesn't have as high of an absorption coefficient, especially as you start getting lower. It's just going to depend on what use case you're trying to do and what frequencies you're trying to absorb.
And 3 feet's that's a lot of material, whatever you're putting back there. So finding something that's kind of affordable or, fits your budget might be the challenge there, Mikey. So hopefully that gives you some good ideas. Austin says Yamaha AVR, let's see, we got a V2085 speakers are the Klipsch 8000F center, 504C for that's the center. Then he's got Atmos Pro 16 RCs. So those are, I think, in ceilings. SVS PB 3000 sub fluon speakers surround. What crossover do you think is best? 80 hertz? All going to be probably room dependent.
Placement specific, how close you're to the wall. What's your auto EQ calibrating them for? Like, what's the highest? Do you have any that are set to 120 or 150, for instance? Like, where's the auto EQ trying to set them? And maybe we won't get the answer. But
so when you run wapow, I always like saying
80 is usually pretty universal, but it's room dependent and speaker dependent on what's going on.
Yeah, and some of those speakers will struggle at 80, perhaps. I don't know those speakers all, like that Klipsch 504C. Is that a 5-inch center channel? Is that what that is, or a 5-inch ceiling speaker?
Yeah, it's a center channel, so it's got a 1-inch tweeter, and then it has 4 5.25 drivers. So it's a pretty big center channel.
Yeah,
it's not like massive speakers, but the actual size of the cabinet's pretty large.
Fluence speakers for surround. We don't have any details on that.
Sure.
Here's the nuance. If you set it at 80 hertz and you override whatever the receiver is, you won't have any EQ being done between where Yamaha set it and where you set it. So say Yamaha tried to set it, and I'm extrapolating a little bit because this is the way Dylan Marantz does it. I'm assuming it's the same way for Yamaha. You guys can correct me if that's not right, but for certainly with Sound United, if Sound United sets it at 150 hertz, it's like for a little ceiling speaker, and you want to set it to 80, you've just disabled EQ between 80 and 150 hertz. There's no EQ being applied, and that may or may not matter to you, but it's just something to be aware of.
So on the line of that, can you go up? So let's say your AVR sets it at 40, which I've seen it do in my setup. I'm like, there's no way these speakers can handle. These are my La Scalas. I'm like, there's no way they can handle 40 hertz. So I bumped them up to 70 or 80 hertz.
You can go up with no consequence. That's fine.
You can go up, but you can't go down. So
and you can go down. It's just that it won't have EQ in that range.
Right. Great question. The last couple here, Joel.
I think we answered that one already.
Okay. Boom, gone. Tim Perry, good to see you, my man. Tim says, I have a base layer of Monolith 365T times 7. So I love having identical speakers on the bed layer. That's cool. Powering those are Crown XLS 1502x4. Then I bought a height layer of the Monolith 265B times 6. So he's got 6 Atmos speakers, height speakers. What are inexpensive for amps besides the XLS 1002? So what are some good budget conscious amps to power?
Tim ought to reach out to Ryan. Ryan's got a great price on some of his own used A800 Behringer amps.
Oh, that's true. You got what?
11
16 of them, 11 of them?
11 amps for a couple hundred a piece is all he's asking. So you could get.
They're really good amps for the money.
He told me a couple hundred for all of it.
Oh, that'd be quite the youth man deal. It's going to cost more in shipping for that.
That's kidding, man. Yeah, and he can bring them to Mwave if you want to wait.
Ultra budget,
pay him now.
Definitely. Buckeye is also a very good price point. Used.
So what do they run roughly? The Buckeye, like their basic Buckeyes.
In that price point, the 252s. They are going to be dependent on the number of channels. The 252, you can get 8 channels for $1,700.
Okay.
Which isn't bad. I mean, 8 channels of amplification, HyperX, which are really, really good modules. It's not bad. It's pretty good. I mean, you're going to get a better price if you buy my used amps.
I was about to say $800, man. That's a no-brainer, man. That's awesome.
The used ones I have are Behringer A800, so they're Class Ds, they're pro amps. They did really, really well. I just can't sell them, so I switched to Buckeye because I'm partnering with him.
Nice, man. Well, we are adequate. I know you guys asked additional questions in the chat, and so I was going to try to hang this to about an hour. We try to keep it at an hour. Definitely, Jonathan, get him back to his family, and Ryan has no life. I have no life. We work 24/7.
I am that has no life.
But we definitely appreciate all of the questions. Great stuff. I'll try to chop some of these up and have some YouTube, what do you call them? Not really shorts, but I guess clips from the podcast. So if you're watching this video later on, and you don't have an hour, it allows you to kind of still get that same information. So, well, cool stuff, man. Good to see everybody in the chat. We had about 133 hanging out with us tonight. So appreciate you guys.
I will not be here next week.
Okay.
Because I'll be at ISE.
Yeah. So ISE is over in Barcelona, Spain, man. That's going to be super, super cool. So just a couple last minute details. Check out Midwest AV Experience. We'd love to have you. We mentioned it a couple times in the podcast. We're doing this July the 14th through the 16th of this year. Super pumped at it. We've got a new venue that we're going to be at. Last year we were at the Lead Center in Kansas City,
which was a great venue. It was great.
This year we've got a lot. Yeah, they were awesome to host us, but this area would just allow us to do so much more at the Kansas City Convention Center. It's closer to the airport. It's close to all the hotels. It's close to food.
It's close to me. Well, not
close
really,
to you.
Closer.
Yeah, I mean, it's just there's so many benefits to being there. And everybody I've talked to says, look, they do all the big trade shows there. Like Bartle Hall, Comic-Con has done them there. I talked to some guys that have done that. So we'd love to have you out. You can check out the information. Still working on the VIP. As soon as I get those set up on the website, then we'll announce the tickets when they're going to be available to purchase. And so the easiest way to do is just go to the website, sign up for the newsletter, and then you'll be the first to know in regards to that. But if you got any home theater stuff you need, hit up Ryan at ascendaAV.net. And with that said, fellas, hope y'all have a great week, man.
Yeah. Thanks. It's a good time.
Take care, guys.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.